this is kind of a two-parter question here. So as the screenshot that was sent in, the question was written a little bit different than what was actually emailed in, than the text that was emailed in here. So we'll just kind of build both of these different scenarios here, just in case somebody wants one or the other. All right, so the first question here is, you see the blue line here is some kind of indicator here, right? It's just drawing a support resistance line. And what's wanted is to monitor a 10-tick offset above or below. So right here for this blue line here, we can see the orange line here is 10 ticks below. And then when the blue line, when this indicator moves lower, then we have this orange dash line above it, 10 ticks above it. So these orange dash lines are just representing the 10 tick offset. So what's wanted is, if price, I'm just going to assume that means the closing price, as opposed to the high or low of the bar, that when the closing price crosses this 10 tick offset, that we want to generate a signal, right, in the direction of price crossing that offset, right? So in other words, if price, moves down and crosses the negative 10 tick offset from this blue line, then we'll generate basically a short signal, as we kind of see here. And then if price moves above the blue line and it crosses above a positive 10 tick offset, above the blue line, we'll generate a long signal here. Right? And then we have a slight variation on that, where we're going to be monitoring the closing price crossing this 10 tick offset, but in this second kind of question here, or this second derivative of this question here, is we want to monitor if price crosses the 10 tick above the indicator in either direction, right? So I guess we'll generate a signal. So if price is above the indicator, then when price crosses this 10 tick offset in either direction, we'll generate a long signal here. If price crosses up, we'll generate a long signal, but also if price crosses down, we'll generate a long signal as well. Right, so that would be basically a long in either direction. So, all right, so that'll be part 2 of this question here. So with that, let me put some kind of indicator on my chart here. Let's see, I'll just put an SMA on my chart. The pivot, I was thinking about using the pivots indicator, but usually those pivot lines, price, the market doesn't like to hang around those pivot lines enough. So I'm just going to use the SMA indicator here. And then how about if we just do like a 200 period. So that would be a nice flat, smooth moving average. There we go. So basically here's our indicator, and we'll create a 10 tick offset above and below and monitor when price is crossing that there. All right, so we can now get started with BloodHound here. So let's click the empty template button up here, and that'll open up BloodHound for us. So obviously I already had BloodHound on my chart. First thing you want to do is when you're creating a new BloodHound system here, we want to put in a file name. So I'm going to hit the change button, and that'll open up the save as dialog window here. And let's see, let me give it a file name. There we go. So today's the 27th, and we'll save that. And there we go. So we have a file name created. So all of our work will now get saved to this file. And then next, I'm going to click on the Logic tab and start working on the logic board here. All right, so let's click New, and let's see here. All right, I guess that's a good enough name. Sometimes coming up with a name is the hardest part. All right, so there's two ways we can approach this. We could create, let's see, I'm just going to draw a line here. So, all right, so that's roughly a 10 tick offset, that line there. So there's two things we could do here. So we could either create a signal that happens on the crossover, right? So when price crosses over this offset, right, you'll get a single crossover signal, or you can generate signals the entire time, right? For every bar that's above this 10 tick offset, you can generate a signal, the entire time that the closing price is above that offset, right? So there's two ways that you can do that. So if you wanted basically, if you wanted a signal for every bar that's above the offset, then you would use a comparison solver, right? Because you're comparing the closing price to the indicator's 10 tick offset. So if price is above it, right, you could generate a long output, and if it's below it. But I think what's intended here is to generate a single signal when price crosses that 10 tick offset here, right? So to do that, we're going to use the crossover solver here instead of the comparison solver, right? So I'm going to use the crossover solver. So here we go, and we're going to connect that in. So let's see here. So we're going to monitor the closing price to see when it crosses over. We have an SMA 200, and so this is going to be a positive 10 tick offset here. All right, so for input A, right, we already have the SMA in there. We just need to switch it over to a 200 period. So, and let's see here. Oh, actually, yeah, well, I kind of got ahead of myself here. So, yeah, the crossover doesn't actually have an offset built into it. So actually, we're going to have to scrap this and go a different route here. So, so the crossover solver doesn't have a 10 tick offset. Yeah, I mean, that would have been ideal, but it doesn't. So, I'm going to scrap that solver, and then I'm going to go back to my solvers tab here and just delete that solver because we don't need it. So, all right, so we're actually going to go back to the comparison solver to do this. And the comparison solver actually has this offset that we can put in here, right? So we can see that we can put in a 10 tick offset in there, or, as it's called, a difference, all right? A 10 tick difference from our SMA. So, all right, so let's get this connected up, and let's plug a name in here. All right, so we're comparing price to a 10 tick offset from the SMA 200. So input A is going to be price, right? And so here we're going to use the closing price, right? So if you're interested, maybe when the wick of the bar, crosses above that 10 tick offset, and, right? So that would be the high of the bar, instead of the close of the bar. Then simply, just choose whatever price of the bar, you want to know that, crosses, or goes above that 10 tick offset there. So, but for this example, I'm just going to use the closing price here. All right, so we have our 10 tick offset. Input B, well, that'll be our SMA 200. So let's change the period to 200, like so. There we go. And so now we just need to take a look at the outputs here. So if you look at this, it says if A is greater than B by 10 ticks. And so what is A? Well, A is the closing price. And what is B? Well, B is our SMA. So our outputs here basically are all correct. Yeah, it's already set up for us. And let's see here. So let's take a look at this. Yeah, so I'm on the NQ. And apparently my line was way off here. But we can see, and actually let me just double check. Let's see, yeah, that's an SMA 200. All right, well, I guess this is all correct. Yeah, it's just these distances look awful short, so I'm just double checking here. So my SMA, actually let's do this to keep the math simple here. Let's switch over to the RTY because 1 point is 10 ticks. So that'll really keep our math simplified here. There we go. All right. So let's check this. All right. So the SMA is at 1565 even. The close is, let's see, 3 ticks up. Yeah, the close is 3 ticks above for the bar where my cursor's at, and there's no output. Okay. So there you go. So as long as the close is within that 10 tick range, right, we can see there's no output. Perfect. And so when the, all right, so here, let's take a look at this here. So, right, the close of the bar is up there. Let's see here. So that closing price is 12 ticks away. Yeah, so it's 12 ticks away from the SMA there. And so we're getting this output, right? So there we go. So yeah, it's a lot easier to visualize using the RTY with 10 ticks. Yeah, so here we can see, right, whenever the close of the bar is, you know, really close to our SMA, no output, but then we get this long bar, right, and the closing price is way down here. And so that closing price is 11 ticks away. Yeah, so that closing price just made it by 1 tick, right? 11 ticks away. And so we got a short output. Okay, so now that we have identified, right, when price moves 10 ticks, you know, away from our indicator line here, now we need to turn these into a discrete signal here so that we don't get continuous signals. We'll just get the first signal, right? The bar that first, you know, breaks above or breaks below that 10 tick offset. So to do that, there's a couple of ways we can do that. All right. So the easy way is to just take the signal blocker, right? That's what the signal blocker does. So if I connect the signal blocker in, right? So right now the signal blocker is only blocking for 5 bars here, right? So block signals for 5 bars. And so we can see, right, we're going to get a bunch of, you know, signals every 5 bars here. So we definitely need to increase that probably for like 50 bars, something like that. There we go. Yeah. So now we can see we're getting a signal on the first bar, right, that crosses that offset there. But then also we should go in here and adjust some of these resets here. All right, so we're not using the reset signal. And yeah, so reset opposite signal. But also we want input no signal. There we go. There, so we're going to get some more signals here now. Let's see here. Let's take a look at the right, original solver. And I'm just going to draw a box here. Oops, wrong box. Here we go. I want this box. Right, just to show me this continuous, signals. Yeah, these continuous line of signals here. Yeah, I just wanted to look at something here. So what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that I have the signal blocker set up correctly. Or set up properly is probably the better word. There. All right. So I've kind of, I really wanted to pay attention to this long, continuous stream of signals here. And so now if I look at the signal blocker, here we go. This is what I wanted to take a look at was, right, that little signal right there. If you notice, it's inside my rectangle. So apparently from this first signal to here, that's 50 bars. And so another signal got through. So apparently 50 bars was not enough. So I'm going to, increase that to, 70 bars, right? That ought to be enough. There. So there we go. So that signal went away. And so now if we look, right, we're getting a signal on the first bar on all these places where I drew, right, these rectangles. So if we go back to this, so let's put some more boxes on here. All right, so I'm just identifying the outputs here. All right, so now that I kind of have all these identified, now I can connect in my signal blocker, and I can just verify that everything looks good. So, all right, so yeah, so there we go. So we're getting a signal on the first bar, and the other continuous signals are being removed. Right, that is what the signal blocker is supposed to do. Is it just kind of cleans up, it cleans up your signal source, right? Cleans it up there, so you'll get one discrete signal out of a long continuous run of signals, right? So there we go. So on the right, so every little rectangle here, right? I'm getting a short on the first bar, but not on the other bars, and we can also see that I'm getting signals on all my arrows. So I set the signal blocker up so that if the output turns off, so like right where my cursor's at, right, there's no output, right? So price went below the 10 tick offset, and then it came back up, and then it went below the 10 tick offset again, right? So whenever there's no output, that's going to reset the signal blocker, and the next signal gets through. Right, so that's what this input no signal does. Is this input no signal? It looks for, all the bars where there is no input, right? Where there's no signal coming into the signal blocker. And so if there is no input, then it resets the signal blocker so that another signal can get through. So, all right, so that's just kind of the quick version there, what's happening. So this basically, using the comparison solver with the signal blocker, simulates as if I was able to do this with a crossover solver, right? So essentially, whenever price crosses down that 10 tick offset, right, we're getting a signal. So yeah, I should take a close look here. So if we look right here, my guess would be that the 10 tick offset is right in the middle. So price is crossing that 10 tick offset, and then the close comes back up above it, and then crosses right back down below it, and then the closing price crosses back up above it and then crosses back down below it again. Yeah. So there we go. So we're able to see all those crossing points, of the closing price crossing that 10 tick offset. Yeah, so there we go. All right, so that basically was the first part of the question. Right, so that was the question posed with the screenshot. Now let's answer this subtle derivative to this. We'll generate a signal if price crosses in either direction. Yeah, in either direction. So we're going to generate a long signal. Let's see, if price crosses down or if price crosses up. I wonder if that's even possible. Let's see. Yeah, that's possible. We will. It'll definitely be a little more complex. Yeah, definitely be a little more complex. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the first question in its own logic template, and then I'm going to, let's see here. Let's copy that, and I'm going to make a new logic template. Paste that name in there, and let's see, we'll extend this name out here. So now we're going to generate a signal if the crossover occurs in either direction. Yeah, so since we can't use the crossover solver itself, we're going to have to use several comparison solvers. So we're going to have to use two comparison solvers to basically simulate a crossover solver. So let's grab that, and so what we're going to do, let's back on here, right? So we'll kind of work in this place here. So so all right, so what I did is I just grabbed the solver from the other logic template here, right? So this first logic template, right? Basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rebuild this logic here. Rebuild this logic on the new logic template here. So let me just do that real quick. Yeah, I guess I should have used the copy button to copy that logic template, but I didn't think I was actually going to need this logic here, but I do. There. All right. Let's see. All right, so we have the logic when price is crossing above the upper 10 tick offset, right? We have the long signals. And of course, if price crosses down, right, below the lower offset, we have those. So now what we need to do is detect when price crosses down on the upper offset. So we just need to detect these, basically crosses in the opposite direction here. And let's see. Actually, I think that's going to be a little easier than I originally thought. So, all right. Yeah, so I'm still going to need two comparison solvers here. All right. So, let's see here. I'm going to put that off to the side. And actually, no, let's get rid of that. So, I'm going to take a little shortcut. So, let's delete that. Right. So, basically, I already have a comparison solver, set up, looking at the closing price with my 10 tick offsets and the SMA 200. So I'm going to copy that, and so to do the to detect the crossing in the opposite direction, basically I just need to adjust my outputs to do that. Yeah, so all right, so I need some kind of catchy name here. All right, so this first solver, it's actually telling me if price is above or below, right, a 10 tick offset from the SMA, from the SMA 200. So this next solver, what I'm going to do is I want to use the A equals B within 10 ticks. And I'll explain what this output does here in just a moment here. So there we go. I'll just give this a different name. So this is going to be priced within, right, the 10 tick offset from our SMA or from our indicator. So let's go back to the logic board here. And so there's that new comparison solver I just made, right? Price within 10 ticks. Let's put that on here. Let's connect that up. Let's take a look at what it's doing here. So what it's doing is, here, let's shrink that up. There we go. So what it's doing is whenever the closing price is within this 10 tick offset. So if we look at this, right, here's my line. So if the closing price is in between, basically if it's in between this 10 tick offset here, right, so we can see the close is inside this 10 tick offset now, right? So in other words, it's within 10 ticks. So as long as the closing price, and we can see that, you know, all of these closing prices are also, right, basically within, right, inside this 10 tick area, right? So that, yeah, so that tells me, yeah, that price just moved inside this 10 tick area. So that would be price crossing down, right? So if we take a closer look here, let's do this. There we go. Right? So basically, the closing price just crossed inside, so it crossed down. And let's see here. All right, and so the next step I need to do is, you notice I'm getting a long and a short output on every single bar, right? So I need to clean this up. So if price is above our indicator, right, we're only interested in the long output. And if price over here, if price is below the indicator, we're only interested in a short output. So this is where I'm going to need another comparison solver. And so on this comparison solver, I'm just basically going to check to see if the close is above or below the SMA 200, right, with no offset. Right, so again, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, is the closing price, you know, below my indicator, or is the closing price, you know, above my indicator? So let's see. All right, let's change the input A to price. Right, there we go. Let's change it to price. Input B, that needs to be our 200 again, our 200 SMA, like so. And yeah, there we have it, right? So whenever price is above our indicator, right, long output, below it, short output, right? Yeah, there we go. So there's price, you know, crisscrossing our indicator a bunch of times. So now, if I take an AND node, so I can take our first solver, right, and then connect in this other solver, and now, there we go. Now we're only getting a long or a short, not both at the same time now. So let's see here. One last step here. So now I'm going to need another signal blocker, like so. And I have a feeling this time I'm probably going to need to block for 100 bars. And we're not using the reset signal, and we do need the input no signal. There we go. So let's focus in on some of these here. Right, so here, grab that arrow. Right, so here we have price crossing above, right, the lower offset. And here's a bunch, here's another one and another one, right? So all of these is price crossing above, right? But what I'm seeing also is if price crosses the indicator, and so we don't want this. Yeah, we don't want this. So yeah, we actually need to make sure that, so we do need to make sure that, right, that the closing price was below the offset before it moved inside, right? And vice versa, we need to make sure that the price was above the offset before it moved inside, right? Because let's see over here, if we scroll back, so we're getting, right, we're getting these signals when price crosses the indicator, crosses above it, but we don't want, we don't want this signal here, right? So we want to get rid of, we want to get rid of these signals when price is crossing the actual indicator. Yeah, we want to get rid of that one. There we go. We want to get rid of that one. That signal as well. Oh, all right. So, yeah. So this solver here, let's go back a little bit. All right, so remember, we already have a solver that tells me if price, right, is below the offset or above the offset. So I already have something telling me, already. Let's see here. Let's just mark this, right, that, oh, look, price was below the offset. So we can use this to, to determine that, oh yeah, price was below the offset before it crossed inside. But, right, this is happening one bar prior to what we actually want to see. Because remember, right, we want to see the signal on this bar. Let's zoom in here. Right, we're looking for the signal on this bar and on this bar. And of course, when we want to get rid of that signal there, right? So we're looking for the signals, right, where the arrows are. But of course, this solver is telling us the condition, right, one bar prior. So what we need to do is use a look back node. All right, so this look back node, we're using the displacement function. So this displacement is turned on by default and it's set to 1 bar. And so if we look now, right, now the signals are shifted forward 1 bar. So now when price is below, right, our offset line, that signal we were getting on that bar is shifted forward is shifted forward 1 bar, right? And this is where the crossover happens, right? So now I can take that and connect it into this AND node. And so now if we look at it, there we go. So right here, remember right here, we used to have a short signal because price crossed the actual indicator, but we got rid of that signal. And if we scroll back here, keep going back, yeah, remember we had a long signal here. We got rid of it, and we got rid of this short signal. So there we go. So that is price crossing, back inside. So right, so that would be, so yeah, for these examples, we're seeing a lot of shorts here. So that would be, that would be creating a short signal, right, when price crosses 10 ticks below the indicator in either direction, right? So what we can do is take both of these, right? So we're going to take both of these signal blockers, and there we have it. So this is price crossing that offset in either direction. So obviously that's going to generate a lot more, signals, because there's a lot more crossovers happening, right? So, all right, let's see. Let's name this here. There we go. All right, yeah. So from this signal blocker, we have, right, price crossing outside the offset, and this one down here is price crossing inside, right, inside of the offset. And then we just combine both of those signals together into an OR node, and then we get basically one joined, signal. So now we get basically signals in both directions there. Neil would like to enter a market here. So so if you want to actually enter a market order, right, then we need to go into the strategies here. So just to be clear, BloodHound is an indicator, so BloodHound cannot submit orders. BloodHound cannot trade, right? Indicators cannot trade. So we have to go into the strategies class here. And so in the strategies window, we have Raven, which comes free with BloodHound. So we can add Raven to our chart. And then with Raven, you need to load a BloodHound template in here. So we'll load in today's workshop template. There we go. Open that up. And then with Raven, then we need to enter, select the entry logic template, right? Which of these logic templates, right, is being used for the entry signals. And so I'll just do the first one here. So if price goes above or below the 10 tick offset. Also with Raven, you can create an exit logic. So you basically, the exit logic is right. It's kind of like the entry signals, but it's the opposite, because you can create signals that say we need to bail on the trade. Just completely, cancel the trade, go flat. Put the position flat on this trade, and that's what the exit logic is for, is to flatten the position. Besides using a stop loss, right? So you can have a stop loss, but if you're really sophisticated, along with using a stop loss, you could also create logic that also says this trade has basically failed, and to flatten the position, before your stop loss gets hit. All right. So that's what an exit logic's for. So, all right. So anyway, so basically, to simply set Raven up to enter a market order, we just load our BloodHound template in, select our entry logic, and let's see here. let's see, not under, there we go, sorry, entry order options, there we go. So by default, Raven will submit a market order, right? So if you want to use a limit order, you can do that. You can enable use a limit order, but by default, with the limit order turned off, Raven's going to use a market order, a market entry order, right? And so then after that, you just need to set your, set a profit target and or a stop loss, right, like that. You could also use an ATM if you'd like, right? So if you have some ATMs created, you can just type in the name right there for your ATMs. But I'll just keep it on the default setting. So this is going to be a tick offset, right? So you also have an ATR offset or a percentage offset, for calculating the profit target and stop losses, right? Those basics. So, right. So really that's it for Raven. Raven is just a really simplistic, free strategy that you can use to get some basic testing results, for your idea, for your system here. Yeah. So that is how you would set up Raven to basically trade this logic here, submitting a market order. So actually this question here is actually the one for the in either direction. So actually I would need to use this logic template. All right, so the logic template that I created for price crossing in either direction, right? So just make sure you select the correct entry logic that you want Raven to trade using. All right, so anyways, so there's just a quick rundown of setting up Raven for submitting market orders, right? And of course, just remember you do need to enable the strategy. So once you're done setting everything up, don't forget to enable it. So as you can see, the enable setting is disabled, right? It's grayed out. And that's because I don't have a data feed, right? So remember, NinjaTrader requires you to be connected to a data feed. So I'm not connected to a data feed right now. That's why so I'm not able to actually enable Raven, but I guess let's go ahead and do that. What the heck? All right, so open up the strategies window again. There's my Raven. Now I can enable it. Click OK. And there we go. There, Raven's little chart trader gets put on the chart, and then the next thing I'll want to do is you notice how the output here, right? How the Raven's BloodHound output just kind of looks messy, right? It doesn't look like the proper signals. Well, if you go to the orange button here, you need to select the logic template that you want to see on the chart. So if we're trading the signals that are crossing in either direction, I'll select that logic template, and there we go. Now I can see those signals right there. So yeah, and just for the new people here, just to explain what's going on, I actually have BloodHound, right, as BloodHound running as the indicator on my chart, right, because this is the BloodHound workshop. But then also Raven, when you load Raven up, right, Raven also will add BloodHound to the chart as well. So you can see the BloodHound signals that are running inside of Raven, right? So basically we have BloodHound on the chart twice. So, right, the first BloodHound is BloodHound as an indicator, and then the second BloodHound down here is BloodHound running through Raven, or running inside of Raven. So that's what's going on there. So